Does it rather bring out an uneasy feeling in you? What does Christmas mean to you? A contemporary had the possibility to talk about Christmas with Gabriele, the prophetess and emissary of God in the present time. The recording of this conversation is available in a pamphlet entitled The Prophet, the Voice of the Heart, the Eternal Truth, the Eternal Law of God given by the Prophetess of God for our time, the fundamental issues of our time to think about and serve in self-recognition. We would like to read from this pamphlet and place today's program under the topic Christmas, the highest celebration of the year.
Der Gesprächspartner von Gabriele.
Gabriele's conversation partner reported the following. As I leafed through a mail order catalog, Christmas came at me from all directions. Aside from nice clothes and many, at times beautiful, at times tasteful, solid everyday objects, everything that could possibly be imagined in association with Christmas was found on those pages. Evergreens and candlelight, shining children's eyes, family happiness at gift-sharing. It was all there. Santa Claus with his red cheeks and mischievous smile showing off a bulging sackful. Little terracotta or plastic singing angels playing different instruments. A musical jewelry box offering the choice of Silent Night or Joy to the World or Away in the Manger. Christmas mangers made of wood or plastic, offered with the sweet little Jesus babe lying in a wood or plastic crib. His hand is raised in blessing, and at his side stands a devotional Mary, while Joseph raises a stable lantern in which burns a bulb with just the right lighting. You see kneeling shepherds, little sheep, and the three kings of the Orient in splendid gowns and crowns on their heads. The radiant star, the musical cherubs, their rounded bodies draped with gently blowing pieces of cloth. Everything that belongs to the right touch of Christmas is there. A couple of pages later were devoted to necklaces in the form of crosses, some with corpse, others not, in gold and silver, studded with diamonds, and for those with a smaller purse, with zircons. Aside from the traditional Christmas cookies and pastries, we find the finest goose pâté and tender ham with a seal of quality, and much more, captured by the over 1,000 catalog pages produced by trained advertising experts. I encountered all the imaginable wishes and desires possible, all the cliches that come so alive in people during the Christmas season. If this were not so, then the clever psychology of trained advertising experts would not be put to use so effectively in these pictures. I was taken aback, said Gabriele's conversation partner, and wondered, what have we Christians done to Christmas?
Gabriele answered as follows. Christmas has become like a big fair, a spectacle of human pleasures and vanity, which in the final analysis a person can only draw away from when he has dealt with the following of Christ and developed inner values. It is only when we become aware of the fact that Christ is alive in our hearts, and that by actively practicing the commandments of God and the Sermon on the Mount of Jesus, our life can change, that our world of pictures, that is, programs concerning Christmas, will change. And then we will remember the Son of God, whose birth as a human being is behind the Christmas celebrations. When I hear about the birth of Jesus, my heart opens wide. Especially during the Christmas season, I become aware again of how the Son of God left behind the heavens, the glory, the being, the peace, and not least of all the Eternal Father, and His throne at the right hand of the Eternal, in order to be born into a human body, into a baby. As all children on this earth, He took on a physical world, raw and cold, in order to live in it. The wealthy people of this world have warm, richly furnished homes. Their life runs its course with the social parameters of the affluent, in which it may very well be that the one doesn't exactly think or talk about the other in a friendly way, but in which wealth always covers over the many human irregularities, under the worldly maxim that says, "Don't do anything to me, and I won't do anything to you." Many rich people live in this consciousness, and insofar as one can talk about good living, they live very well. Externally, you can afford anything that you can imagine, because you are well situated.
Gabriele führte weiter aus.
Gabriele explained further, but what was it like for the one who came from the affluence of the heavens, the Son of the All-Highest, who came from the inner kingdom where all beings are rich as heirs to infinity, thus truly affluent? Jesus came into a carpenter's family to Mary and Joseph. He did not come to an affluent family on earth, but to people who, through their God-conscious life, were pleasing to the Eternal, to take into their midst the Son of the Most High. He came into their midst, surrounded by shepherds, sheep, and other animals present at His birthplace, the stable which gave shelter to the light of the heavens. Even though I, said Gabriele, have had to make certain sacrifices during my life, I am glad and thankful that I am not externally rich. Possessions, power, a prestige weighed down by millions would oppress me before the face of God, who let His Son be born among the lowly of this world, entrusting Him to people who possessed only a tiny house, having no more to eat than what Joseph could earn with his own 2 hands.
Gabrieles Gesprächspartner.
Gabriella's conversation partner thought the following about this. If God were for the wealth of the rich, then He would have let His Son be born into a wealthy family, or helped Mary and Joseph become affluent. Especially Christmas shows me that I am on the right track with my few belongings. Especially at Christmas, I can feel that it all depends on doing what the co-regent of the heavens in Jesus taught us and lived for us as an example. Especially at Christmas, I feel that I, a small little light, may follow Him, the great light, by igniting myself again and again on the great light, on the Christ of God, so that my tiny flame of love grows larger. For me, Christmas, thus spoke the conversation partner, is no longer what I encounter at the special display markets of Advent or Christmas, in the storefronts of the cities, in the offerings of the catalog houses. And yet, today the Advent weeks and Christmas itself have become a very special time for me. The time of Christmas is, for me, as if the floodgates open in my inner being, and forces are freed which do not bring me closer to the babe Jesus, but to the Christ of God, who came to us as Jesus, who entered the darkness of this world, and brought us the light of the heavens, the promise of God's love and of redemption for all souls and men.
Hören wir nun Gabriele.
Let's now hear Gabriela's answer. She said, "How right you are. Christmas is a special time. It can make the hearts softer of people who during the year have done and practiced what dissolves the hard crust of egoism and profit-thinking, making the person more reconciliating and peaceful by clearing up the all-too-human aspects in order to enter into the following of Jesus the Christ. Then our soul has become lighter, for we feel that the earthly year that is drawing to a close has been worthwhile for us. Our life then takes an ever more conscious turn, because Christ has become the center of our life. We have taken steps that lead us to our neighbor to be there for him. The positive communication increases with our fellow man, with the animals, plants, stones, the stars, the elemental forces, with everything that lives. This brings out a deep gratitude in the sense of fulfillment, which means inner happiness and makes us rich, regardless of how things are on the external, material level. A person who develops the inner wealth rejoices in the small things of life. He becomes a person who is aware of life and near to life. He affirms the positive in all things, even if he also sees the negative. He will give no strength to the negativity, linking with the positive instead, that is, entering into communication with it. We are, after all, on earth to go through the school of earth, and this means to take our learning steps day by day by recognizing the aspects of our sinfulness which the day radiates to us, repenting of them and clearing them up, so that with the help and guidance of the Christ of God we may grow closer to God, our Father. On this path of recognition and purification, we become more sensitive and open to our fellow man, because our soul ignites again and again on the light of the Christ of God.
Gabriele continued explaining, when we look into this world, we see again and again, among all the catastrophic, power-hungry, exploiting and greedy wheeling and dealing, a small little light, a person who has turned from this vampire-like existence and turned towards Christ, having thought of something better and measuring his thinking and living with the 10 Commandments of God and the teachings of Jesus. That these points of light are increasing in number, that they are reaching out, unfolding a network of light that goes round the earth and draws to it those who want to ignite the light of their hearts through a positive life turned towards God. It is in this that lies the hope for a better and truly Christian world in which Christ is the center, the life in God. Such people are gentle, that is, of tender heart, because during the course of the year they have struggled with their faults and weaknesses, with their egotistical way of thinking and acting, in order to become free of it with the help of our Redeemer. They are people who in many ways have turned away from the hoopla surrounding the wax, wood, or clay figurines which are supposed to symbolize the babe in Bethlehem, in order to turn to the risen one whose redeeming power dwells in them, as in each one of us. It is those who decide to keep the order of the temple in themselves, which means to cleanse the temple of God, the soul and body of sin, so that the great light, which you just mentioned, can resurrect more and more in the temple, in the soul and body of the person. These God-oriented people are the ones who know about the all-power and all-might of God that dwells in each person and in all life forms of nature. For them, what holds true is, lift up the stone and you sense God. Feel into the water drop, into the brook, into the mighty waves of the ocean, and you experience Him. Watch a tiny animal, and you perceive the divine life. Look at a flower, and you see the light of the heavens. Look into the firmament, watch the stars, and the all-power of God shines towards you. Accept your neighbor, and you experience that God's love dwells in him. For such people, the Christmas celebration is a great celebration of thanksgiving for the year that draws to a close. They live in inner contemplation and know that they too are children of the All-Highest, who are again growing spiritually during their life on earth into a son, a daughter of God, in order to enter eternity. God, that is, to return to the one who sent his Son, Jesus the Christ, to us human beings.
With her further explanations, Gabriela gives us a lot of material to think about. During the Christmas season, huge sums are expended in order to externally produce, on the streets, in the houses, and even in the front yards, the light that has not been lit up in the inner being of many people. It may very well be that the spark of divine light, the spark of God and the Redeemer, lies indelible deep within our soul, and especially during Christmas time, it may very well be stirred in many. But wherever the ice in the heart has not been made to melt during the course of the year, the yearning sensations coming from the bottom of the soul, from the bottom of the heart, will be able to bloom hardly more than as a diffuse sense of melancholy, a maudlin sentimentality. Sentimentality can be recognized as such in that it remains fruitless for the individual, without consequences for his way of thinking or living. Sentimentality means that you stir around in the pot of unclear feelings of melancholic nostalgia and unadmitted guilt, mixed in with self-pity and the regret for having missed out on some things. A person who gives into this sentimentality will hardly be blessed by it. On the contrary, often his finger points to the guilt of his neighbor, and accusations, reproaches, and not seldom aggressions don't wait long in coming up. Often, quarrels break out right in the midst of Christmas Eve, perhaps only waiting until the children have gone to bed before getting at it. Many drown their strong and aggressive mood swings in champagne and wine. Silent night, holy night. Next day, business as usual. If only some were to look into their Christmassy fits of sentimentality, letting their feelings come up, they would gain self-recognition and the strength to repent of many things done or missed in guilt, and could thus make amends for much with the strength of our Redeemer, Christ, introducing a turn for the better in their lives.
Gabriele gave a picture for this. Just as the sun cannot transform a great block of ice into living, flowing water in one day, so can the heart of many a Christian cannot turn soft during Christmas, when the energies of his days were used to press his fellow men into service, or to squeeze from them whatever could be gained for his benefit. Many have already long since silenced their conscience, so that they barely become aware of a fraction of what they have done during the year, that they have despised their neighbor, abused him for their purposes, exploited him, made claims for themselves, put pressure on others, so that they do for them what they themselves don't want to do, elbowing their way up the ladder of success. It was and is a needing of his fellow man to make the ladder more yielding through defamation, discrimination, spreading untruths, and much more. Many people have reached the margin of minimal subsistence. Millions are unemployed. And yet, thousands upon thousands are millionaires who continue to fill up their bank accounts to remain affluent all their lives. All of them, rich and poor, exploiter, inciter, rapist, child abuser, bordello owner, animal torturer, blackmailer, and many more, all call themselves Christian. Many are Catholic or Protestant. They sit in the intimate circle of their families as father and mother around the freshly cut evergreen tree, which breathes out the fragrance of its last breath. In a mannerly fashion they consume the lobster thrown live into boiling water, or the fatted and stuffed roast goose. They sing Silent Night, and perhaps even brush away a silent tear of nostalgia because, caught up in the Christmas mood, they remember their own childhood where father and mother, at least during the Christmas hours, brought a hint of the perfect world into their living room.
The Christmas celebration, the highest celebration of the year, has become the crowning touch in turning Jesus the Christ into a ludicrous figure, continued Gabriele, God's prophetess, and threw a light on the days following Christmas. The year comes to an end around the time of Christmas. We look back over the year. A few days after the Christmas festivities, the New Year tumult begins. Here, Christians blow away several hundred millions for fireworks as a sensational way to begin the year. How many people could be helped by these millions? Children wasting away in orphanages, people living under bridges, big-bellied children bloated by torturous hunger in underdeveloped nations. Children die at their mother's breast because she had no food and could produce no milk to feed the little one. People who die of starvation by the tens of thousands. People who waste away in the wretched city slums or in refugee camps, whose bodies are overrun with illness, and who simply have to wait for death to come because the Christian, who should be practicing love of neighbor, doesn't bring the necessary medications, often not even a handful of rice, a handful of grain, a piece of bread. The Christian blows it away.
Gabriella's conversation partner answered to this. Ultimately, I had such a nice picture of the Christmas celebrations. I must have been crazy to have gone along with such a thing as a church Christian. I feel ashamed to be a Christian at all, because with what you are saying, I've had to point a finger at myself a lot. A terrible picture just came up in me. If I rightly remember, it is around the time of Pentecost that the young of animals are born. For some years now, I often drive in early summer through a small village where a flock of young geese more or less live out their lives on a rather small piece of land. They are happy and contented with the rather limited space they have to live in. I have watched them grow and asked myself why people keep so many geese when they hardly have enough room for them. When I asked this question of my friend, he said, "Boy, are you naive? During the past years, haven't you seen that starting with Advent they get less and less in number? Until after the 24th of December, after celebrating the birth of Christ, there are no more to be seen." It was as if scales fell from my eyes. The same. Every year, the poor animals, they were not allowed to even live out 1 year before being eaten by animal cannibals. Since then, I also want no part of feather beds. Who knows how many Christmas geese have to give up their feathers for this? My friend went on. Don't you know how many baby seals are skinned every year so that high society ladies can show off an especially beautiful sealskin coat? My friend spoiled the rest of the day for me with a couple of other examples. He continued to tell me that especially Christmas geese are not only simply killed, but before that, their bill is violently opened and special feed is pressed down their throat, even to the point of being stuffed full with the handle of a cooking spoon, so that the poor animal has to swallow, swallow, and swallow, and the animal cannibal man can enjoy a fine goose liver pate for the celebration of the birth of Christ. That hens are kept in the most limited space, in laying batteries, and, when grown to the right size and weight, cockerels are beheaded and end up in the pot or frying pan, or skewered through and placed in a show window so that the cannibals can pick out their own chicken. He also told me about the slaughterhouses, where animals bellow in fear of the death shot, because they sense that their life will be violently taken. The animals know very well that they are being led to the slaughter block when they leave the farmer's barn. My companion explained further how medications and hormones are given to the animals to speed up their growth process, going all the way to chemically and genetically induced changes in cows, whose resultant udders can hardly be carried between their legs. The crowning statement in his words was, "Everything, but everything is being milked. The great of this world are milking the lesser, and the great and the lesser are milking the whole Mother Earth until it is totally milked out, that is, eaten up by the monster who calls himself man." And then Gabriella's conversation partner said, "Thank God that I have not recovered from everything that he described to me. I have become a different person, who cherishes more and more what God daily gives to us, who is more and more aware of what love of God and neighbor means, who is becoming more and more aware of what the institutional churches really are."
Regarding the institutional churches, Gabriele gave us something to think about. Few people have learned from what the church institutions have served them up with year after year. A mixture of pagan cult and cosmetically treated teaching. Both pieces of work, pagan cult and cosmetically treated teaching, were melted together into one work, which was named Protestant on the one hand and Catholic on the other. If they had taught what Jesus wanted, then people would be familiar with the law of sowing and reaping, and many a one who may have wanted to commit an assault on his fellow man or on the Mother Earth would have changed his mind in time, aware of the words of Jesus, "What you do to the least of my brothers," with this he also meant his sisters, "you do to me." And at the same time, each one does it to himself, because the Christ of God is in each person. This also holds true for the kingdoms of nature, because the mighty Spirit of the eternal Creator is in all forms of life.
In this brochure, The Prophet, my concern is, Gabriele continued, that many people look into my words and hear the cry, the call of an instrument of God which says, "Follow no men, follow Jesus the Christ, and reflect upon his statement, 'Do to others as you would have them do to you,' or, 'What you don't want others to do to you, do not do to others.' This also holds true for animals and for all the life forms of the earth." We just heard, whatever we do to our neighbor, we do to ourselves according to the law of sowing and reaping. The one who becomes aware of this will also understand why this world is the way it is. The great support each other and trample those below them. To this effect, the church and the mighty within the state, often in unity, are the masters who make of the people the apprentice. But we, who are the people, should not continue this trampling on others by crushing our fellow man underfoot, thus turning away from Jesus the Christ and crushing him underfoot in our neighbors, so to speak. The person who keeps the commandments of God step by step will straighten up internally and look to the one who called us to follow him. With all my heart, Gabriele continued, I wish that ever more people awaken, that many a one reflect upon his dissolute and egotistical life, and dissociate himself from what lies in his feelings and thoughts, the blackmailer, the inciter, the animal torturer, the animal cannibal, the thief, the vengeful, etc., etc. My whole desire is that ever more people find Christ in themselves and live consciously in him, so that they may daily recognize their blown-up ego and repent of their sinfulness and clear it up with the help of the Christ of God. The person who then no longer commits these, his sin, lives in his spirit more and more, and is his follower, a person of character, that is, of good convictions, who is able to live with his fellow man, who respects and cherishes nature, and finds himself again as the son or the daughter of God.
Gabriele, the prophetess and emissary of God, explains further. The highest celebration of the year begins with Advent, and she quotes from a well-known Christmas song in Germany. Every year, the Christ child comes down to earth, where we human beings are living. To each house goes his blessing. He goes with us on all our paths and byways. He is at my side too, and unknown to me, quietly and faithfully leads me by his loving hand. Thus far the text of this song. Which Christ child should come down to the earth? Christ, the Son of God, with the whip, should enter each home? Or is it enough for us that we take the dust-covered wood or wax figurine, the Christ child, and the dusty manger with Mary and Joseph and all the oxen and donkeys, and bring them down from the attic on the last day of Advent, dust them off, and again put them under the decorated tree? Not a single piece may be missing, not an ox, nor a donkey, nor a sheep, nor a goat. Of course, on Christmas Eve, a special place is arranged in the manger for the holy couple, Mary and Joseph, and the shepherds. The dusting cloth is black with dirt, but the manger shines brightly, and the person sings with full heart, every year the Christ child comes down to earth where we men are living. To each house goes his blessing. He goes with us on all our paths and byways. He is at my side too, and unknown to me, quietly and faithfully leads me by his loving hand. The question is whether the dust-free mini-manger with the dust-free Jesus babe, with Mary and Joseph, with the shepherds and animals, really brings a blessing to the people. Whoever thinks about the fact that they should finally dust off all their malicious feelings, thoughts, words, actions, and all their vile tendencies? No one has time for that. Neither at Christmas, nor at New Year's, nor Easter, Pentecost, nor All Saints' Day, let alone during the Christmas season. You tend to think about all sorts of things, for example, who gives what to whom. But few think about what gift they gave to the Christ of God, their Redeemer, during the course of the year. He, the Spirit of the Christ of God, the Holy Spirit, which daily knocks at the door of our heart, and truly goes on all paths and byways with us. For most people, he is undesirable because the one who almost 2,000 years ago came to us on earth as a babe, and who, as Jesus the Christ, the greatest prophet of all times, announced to us the love of God and showed us the way to the Father, made and makes for many too high demands.
Gabriele continues and clarifies. Jesus taught us the love for God and neighbor. He taught us about loving our enemies and lived this as an example for us. He taught us about equality and brotherliness. He gave us the parable of the beam and splinter. Jesus lived the 10 Commandments for us, which God gave man through Moses, and taught us the Sermon on the Mount, which also was his life. He said, "Follow me," that is, the Jesus, and this means, fulfill and live what I, the Christ of God, have commanded of you. Jesus did not teach us to set out a dusty manger with its contents year after year. Jesus did not teach us to let holy songs drone on and on in stores and markets in order to fire up the buying mood. Jesus did not teach us to give our neighbor expensive gifts, all the way to fur coats made from the skin of baby seals. Jesus did not teach us to hunt animals and shoot them, to slaughter them and then consume their carcasses. Jesus did not teach us to exploit nature, to defile the earth and destroy the atmosphere. He did not teach us to fell trees in memory of his day of birth on earth. to decorate them and put them in warm rooms, and then, after 10 days, to cast them into the streets of this world like used-up nature carcasses. Jesus did not teach us to devote our ears to church authorities. He did not teach us to pay church taxes, as it is done in Germany, or to pay tithes, so that the ecclesiastical authorities become rich and increase in prestige and power. Jesus did not teach us that we should attend the so-called holy masses. He taught us to turn within, into our inner being, and at that in a quiet chamber, that is, turned away from church luxury and splendor. He did not teach us to maltreat and kill everything that has its existence in and on the earth, in and on the waters and in the air, and that everything that is suitable to be consumed should be slaughtered in order to be eaten as a carcass. He did not teach us to be animal cannibals, child abusers, blackmailers, rapists, adulterers, defamers, discriminators, thieves, liars, and so much more. He taught us high ethical standards, not the disintegration of all morals and values. He taught us what is moral and not the immoral. He taught us, spoken in general terms, that we should live in the awareness of the filiation in God.
But what has become of mankind? Asks Gabriele, and explains thereto. Many think they live, but in reality they are spiritually dead, for their hearts are of stone, as it were, just as their souls are shadowed. In our life on earth, rich and poor have crystallized and been given shape. The rich are the holders of power, the poor deprived of any power. But since rich as well as poor can see in movies how a rich person can live, the poor strive to gain a little piece of the cake of wealth. The person who carries brutality within himself as an all-too-human inheritance, which he may have acquired in previous incarnations and not yet laid aside, will many times over become the hypocrite, the thief, the rapist, and much more. Others, in turn, who do not carry the nature of brutality as so marked a character trait, simply waste away, living under the bridges of this world, lying on heating vents in order to gain some of the warmth from underneath for themselves. Still others lie or sit begging in the streets, or, like Mary and Joseph in their search for shelter, go from house to house, eventually perhaps finding shelter on a bitterly cold night. At the end of the pamphlet, Gabriele passes on the following story. It is Christmas Eve. A man with a woman in an advanced state of pregnancy knocks on this or that gateway asking for shelter. Each time they are turned away. Today, almost 2,000 years after the original event of Christmas, two people are thinking, maybe a church dignitary, a bishop, can take us into his palace with all its many rooms. After all, he represents the Christian values of his church, the values of love for God and neighbor. It is already late in the evening. The man and the woman stand before the palace and look up at the lights in the windows. The light penetrates through only a few windows. Most of them lie in darkness. The man says, "Wife, we will surely find shelter here. The palace has many rooms, and one of them will surely be made available to us." Timid and apprehensive, they knock on the majestic portals of the Lord Bishop in humble submission before the great Christian man, who surely walks in the footsteps of Jesus. Their knocking is not heard. Despite their anxiety, they venture to knock again, somewhat more firmly on the great portal. From within the warm and grand house, voices are heard.
Both people, freezing and huddled together before the entranceway of the great episcopal house, must listen to the words spoken from within the building. How impolite to knock on the episcopal portals and invade our Christmas Eve in such a disturbing way. All the invited guests are already at the table and around the burning fireplace. Who could that be? The housekeeper approaches the front door cautiously and looks through the peephole. Outside stand two people. She does not know them and calls back into the house. Are we expecting more guests? The bishop comes to the front door and says, "It's already very late. We are not expecting any more guests, but those standing outside do not look dangerous. Let's hear what they want." The safety chain is slid back and the door is opened as far as the chain allows. The bishop asks through the narrow space, "What do you want?" The man answers, "My wife is very pregnant. I ask for shelter because the night is turning very cold and we have no place to stay." The bishop straightens up and suppressed outrage can be read on his face. His thoughts are, "I should take in these two people in dirty, torn clothes. There are enough inns where they can find a place." "My dears," he says gently, pretending great humility, "it isn't possible for me to take you in, but certainly there is a place for you in one of the surrounding inns." The man answers, "We have no money and are very hungry." He gathers his courage and continues, "Please, Lord, let us in. Give us shelter in your great house. Give us food for the mother and the child that is about to come." Quickly the bishop pulls out his purse to give the two people money for overnight shelter and food at the inn. Suddenly he stops and thinks, "It is beneath me to give cash like this." A bishop gives his blessing, but not contemptible mammon. Besides, this has to do with the Department of Social Services, the government, or if need be, the Episcopal Treasurer is in charge of such things. After all, he receives a lot of money every year for charitable services. The bishop's purse disappears into the folds of his wine-red cassock. But where is the treasurer charged with giving alms? The prelate is not in. The bishop remembers something else. Yesterday, respectable sums came in from good-hearted people for the restoration of a house of God. I will give both a small sum from that. Again he hesitates and thinks, a few houses down the road is a farm. The farmer could shelter them in his stable. There the woman wouldn't cause too much trouble if her birth pains start coming. The high and great-hearted man, the bishop, offers both people the farm for one thing, and for another money for an inn. Sadly, both people look at the well-dressed, well-fed Lord in his warm bishop's palace. A trace of pity is reflected on the face of His Excellency. "Now," says he, "here you have a few coins from the contribution box," and shows them the way to the farm.
And so the search for shelter begins again. This time, the two of them, man and very pregnant woman, are not without hope, because they can give His Excellency the Bishop as a reference. Again they knock at the gate. This time, the farmer comes and asks, "Who is knocking so late at night?" Outside, someone says, "Please, I humbly ask for shelter. His Excellency the Bishop sent us to you." The door opens up and the farmer says, "There is no free room in my home, but perhaps in the stable here at the side you may find shelter. The animals, the ox, cows, and sheep, I have sold to the butcher for a good price. One has to see how one gets along." Thankfully, they accept. They enter the cold stable and lie down on the straw. There are no animals to give them warmth. 2,000 years ago, it was similar with Mary and Joseph. Today, 2,000 years later, morality has fallen even more. At Christmas time, countless animals are slaughtered. The stables are emptied, aside from those animals that will be held ready for the New Year's days. You want to still have a couple of good roasts for the table then, too. In the two people, we encounter Mary and Joseph and the still unborn child, Jesus. Who recognized them? Who understood the symbolism? Neither the bishop's housekeeper, nor His Excellency, nor the farmer. Only one, the wife of the farmer, came to the stable and brought both of them warm blankets and something to eat. She's the only one who thinks, "This is extraordinary, wonderful. I have to think about what happened 2,000 years ago. The parallels are too obvious. Does God want to show me something through these two people?" The woman stands very still for a few moments. Then she says to herself, "Can it be? Has He come to my house, to my stable? The great Lord, who is the Redeemer of all people and souls? Or is it only a feeling that overcomes me because today is Christmas? Is this the truth? What does this want to tell me?" Her heart beats ever more loudly. A warm feeling comes up in the farmer's wife, and she thinks, it isn't just every year that the Christ child comes down to earth, where we men are living. Each day, each hour, each moment, actually, during my whole life on earth, the Christ of God is with me and goes on all my paths and byways with me. He is at my side and, unknown to me, quietly and faithfully leads me by His loving hand.
Gabriela explains about this story. A person has awakened and now understands the silent and holy night. We should sanctify our life day by day in the awareness that the Christ of God, the Great Spirit, dwells in each one of us. We are the temple of the Holy Spirit, and we should love and help one another as Jesus the Christ loved and loves us every day, by the hour and the minute at our side. A transformation takes place in the farmer's wife. She goes to both people and offers her help. A child comes to the world, a child like you and me. And in it, too, is the Holy Spirit, the Christ of God, our Redeemer, just as in you, in me, and in us all. A person turned night into day. The day of Christmas is another day, and the coming year will be another year. The one person, the farmer's wife, daily asks herself, "What does Jesus want me to do now?" And this person, the woman, receives the words of the Holy Spirit in the following sense: "Do what I commanded of you as Jesus. Measure your feelings, sensations, thoughts, words, and actions on the 10 Commandments of God and on the teachings of the Sermon on the Mount, so that you become rich in your inner being, so that the kingdom of God, that is your inner being, may develop, and you may again become a daughter of God, who is rich in her heart and lives in peace with all people and with the kingdoms of nature. Only then will there be peace."
Dear viewers, dear listeners, you heard a reading of a conversation with Gabriele on the topic Christmas, the highest celebration of the year, from the series The Prophet, the Voice of the Heart, the Eternal Truth, the Law of God, given by the Prophetess of God for our time. The fundamental issues of our time to think about and serve in self-recognition. We thank you for listening and wish you a contemplative Advent season and a blessed Christmas. Goodbye and greetings in God.
Was Jesus of Nazareth? What was his childhood and youth like? This question is asked by people all over the world who want to learn the truth about the life of the greatest teacher of mankind. Followers of the Nazarene report authentically about the life of Jesus of Nazareth, free of the interpretations and falsifications of church historians. Their sources are Christ's revelations given through Gabriela, his prophetess and emissary in our time.